Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Why Almost Every Foreigner Leaves Poland Eventually. Well, I've never heard of that. I think, but what I think is going to happen with every culture. I think the culture shock between where you've come from or what you know is very different from what you expect to be your forever home country, then I think things are going to be hard, right? So I don't know, I'm curious, maybe I don't know, society in Poland is very close. I'm curious, so let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
Poland is not for most foreigners. Seems like a lot of people are romanticizing Poland right now because of their strong anti-illegal immigration stance, their very nationalistic and protective culture, how safe it is, how fast it's developing. And that causes a lot of people to come here for the fantasy. They think that, oh, Poland is this utopia here in Europe. But then all of a sudden reality hits and most people end up leaving. I've lived here long enough to see people come and go, and I'm going to tell you exactly why most foreigners end up leaving Poland. So this seems to be a basic pattern. A lot of foreigners come to this country and they go through the honeymoon phase. I know for me, because I've only visited Europe, but this is the first time that I've actually lived here. Getting to experience the European life is amazing. Public transportation everywhere, a lot more chill and laid back way of life. Not a heavy focus on work, but more of like a work-life balance.
That's nice.
Food. But after the first couple months, especially from months 3 to 6, I think that this is where a lot of people change their mind. The big problem with a lot of foreigners, especially here in Poland, is that they refuse to integrate. I think most people do it out of laziness, or maybe it's a certain arrogance that comes with it. A lot of people here are here transiently, right? They're here for a time. Either they're trying to make their way to Western Europe, or they're only here for the summer so they can go out, hang out with friends, meet some women, and then they all eventually leave. So because they don't have a lot of investment in this country, they don't really choose to integrate. And a lot of people end up living this life for years. It's crazy the amount of people that I met that have been here for 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, and still don't speak one lick of Polish. That is not Poland's fault. That is a refusal to integrate by these foreigners. Now, when I see other people praising Poland, it feels very hollow because a lot of the stuff that they talk about is very superficial. And a lot of people seem to be only hyping up the country to get views because Poles love it when you talk well about their country, and they'll just farm you for views forever. So let's talk about the biggest hindrance for a lot of foreigners, and that is the winter. I find it interesting that winter here seems and feels extremely miserable to a lot of people. But if you go to the Nordic countries where winter is objectively worse, for some reason, winter feels better there. And I think the Nordic philosophy on winter is they talk about embracing winter instead of surviving winter, whereas I think the Polish mentality is a little bit more about surviving the winter. It's great up until around New Year's, but January and February is absolutely hell. I'm sorry. There's something about the vibe in the air, how short the days are, the feeling that everybody has, and maybe just the lack of color in the country as well that makes people extremely depressed. And that's why a lot of foreigners who like Warsaw only really come for the summer, but as soon as it gets cold, most people leave. I personally like the 4 seasons. Every season has their own vibe. Fall to me is easily the best, and I like spring a lot, but winter can be rough, and I can see why. But also, if you didn't do a good job of making community and friends during the summer, during the winter, it can feel extremely lonely. So this is going to be the third Polish winter that I survive. I am well prepared this time. If you take vitamin D consistently and you have a good community of friends around you, winter all of a sudden becomes a lot more manageable and a lot easier to deal with. If you guys are enjoying the video,
I'm wondering if it's not because of the cold, but it's just because of the sunlight. You don't get sunlight, so it's not that cold, but everything gray and no sunlight makes you depressed, so makes everything worse.
Give it a like and please subscribe to the channel. Helps a lot. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the language. Now, it's not a secret that Polish is very difficult, but there are a lot of issues with this language. So first off, if you only speak English, making the jump from English to Polish is crazy. It's like going from level 2 to level 5 in language. Because I speak Mandarin and Spanish, transitioning to Polish was actually not that difficult because a lot of the sounds that people can't hear, we have them in Mandarin. So I've been able to hear a lot of the consonant sounds, and a lot of the grammar rules actually share a lot with Spanish, which is why a lot of Latinos that end up moving here to Poland end up speaking very good Polish. Polish people are very proud of their language being extremely difficult, but are also
Why?
frustrated when foreigners refuse to learn the language because it's so difficult.
Maybe it's actually a thing about it's a cutoff. So if you learn Polish, then they'll like you better because well, you really didn't make an effort because we have a really difficult language. So it's a sort of it's a cutoff. Yeah, it's good.
I think a lot of foreigners who have lived here for a long time just refuse to learn the language out of laziness or arrogance. Oh,
Yeah,
I don't need to learn it. Everybody here speaks English. But if you don't know the language, Polish people just treat you differently. As
Yeah.
someone who's been here for almost 2 years, my Polish is like pretty good now. It's like a A2, but I can converse
Wow.
with most people in most
only 2
everyday
years?
situations. And the treatment is so crazy different. They treat me all of a sudden extremely warm. They're very impressed by my level of Polish. Now I also understand what
Because you
they're
did an
saying.
effort.
If you don't understand Polish and you hear them yelling at you, you think that they're just angry and rude. But if you know exactly what they're saying, you just know that that's just how they speak. They're not saying anything rude. They're just extremely direct. And these are all nuances that you can only learn if you take the time to learn the
course.
language. But I think that if you don't speak Polish, you will feel like an outsider forever
Yeah,
here. And I think that's why a lot of people say that when they live here, it can be quite lonely. One of the things that I like about Polish people is that they are a lot more direct and they're not fake. So they make fun of us Americans because we like to do small talk and it's a lot of BS. And I can see where they're coming from. But in my opinion, as an American, that's just good manners, right? But for them,
Yeah,
if you
it's
ask them
nice.
how their day is and how they are doing, they will tell you for real. And then they'll go into like detail about everything that's going on. And that
But I like
leads
that.
to a lot deeper connections and friendships. I
Yeah.
think. Like they have a very hard exterior, but once you really get to know them, you realize they're super, super funny. Polish humor is like some of the best ever. I play PlayStation with this Polish guy that I met in Poznan, and the jokes that we have are so crazy. We go from many extremes, like to religion or to race, but it's all
Okay, so
in
it's dark
good
humor.
fun, bro. But it's very difficult to break into those groups initially. Polish people will be polite to you as a foreigner, but it's quite rare now where they'll try to go out of their way to befriend you. Poland is a country where it's a lot more rewarding the more you invest and put effort into it. The more you learn about the
So
history,
many
the more
things.
you learn about the language, really separates you from the other foreigners. And as you've seen on my channel, I feel like Polish people appreciate and respect that a lot. So
Yeah.
one of the big issues about this country too is the bureaucracy and the residency and visa process. So it's quite
I think that's a thing in Europe because I think especially coming from the United States, it's going to be one of those things where the European bureaucracy, it's going to, well, it's a thing. It's a real thing.
quite difficult to stay in Poland. I applied for my TRC in January, but now I'm waiting for my fingerprints appointment. They were supposed to give it to me in Krakow in
for
June,
passport?
but because
What?
I moved cities to Warsaw, I had to reapply in Warsaw. So
yeah.
now I'm waiting for the fingerprint appointments again, and it's been
Yeah.
almost a year. So
That's
a lot of
usually how it
people I
goes.
know, when they wait for their TRC, they're kind of stuck in this country,
They have
and
to-
it can take
in the
10
city.
months, 12 months. I've heard some processes take up to 2 to 3 years even.
Yeah.
But if you know the right people, if you know the right lawyers, if you know how everything works,
Lawyers.
then it
Oh,
can
yes,
be a
of
lot
course.
easier of a process. If you guys are interested in how to move to Poland or how to get residency here, all of that, set up a consultation with me here. We can talk about it. Another way that you can legally live in Europe is by getting a second citizenship. There are many countries that offer citizenship through investment or family or business. One of my best
think all
friends,
of them.
Raphael at The Wealthy Expat, this is all that he does. He helps people get second citizenships all around the world. Having another citizenship comes with a lot of perks. There's a lot of tax benefits that come with it, and being able to travel more freely and live
Yes.
in places all around the world. His company has helped hundreds of people get second citizenships all around the world. He speaks English, Spanish, German, Russian, and Polish. So if you guys are interested, I highly recommend booking a call with Raphael, and you can learn a lot more information on his channel, The Wealthy Expat. All right, so let's talk about some juicy stuff. Polish people, and I would say just everybody in this part of Europe, like Eastern Europe especially, they have a reputation for being racist. And that
Oh, they
is
do?
this is kind of a complicated subject because I agree and I think overall it is true. But they are
Oh
racist
my
to certain
God.
groups of people over others. Asians, thankfully, here are highly respected and appreciated. So
That doesn't
we're
make
kinda
it
like the
better.
good immigrants and they like us a lot. But if you are Arab, if you are Indian, if you are black, they receive a lot of hate from the local people.
Oh
Yesterday
my
I was playing
God.
PlayStation with these Polish guys and one of the guys was like, "Oh, you're an immigrant? I hope you're not an abomination from like the African countries." And I was like, "Whoa, bro." But he kind of said it as a joke, but I know this is the mentality of a lot of
It's not a
Polish
joke.
people here. Now,
I
this
don't
may be
know.
controversial. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but I think that is one of the reasons why it's so safe in this country. Homogeneous societies all around the world in general are just safer. Polish people are racist to outsiders, but if they see that you are making an effort to learn and to assimilate to their culture, regardless of what color you are, then you will get their acceptance. And you have to understand where this racism comes from, because Poland is very skeptical of outsiders due to their history. During the 20th century, Poland had it so rough. They were conquered, they had so many different wars, they were under Soviet control, they were really to be completely honest. Another reason why foreigners leave is because of the cost of living. If you heard over the last few years, people will say that Poland was very cheap, but it's not cheap anymore. It's a rich country now. Everything is expensive, or just as expensive as a lot of Western European countries, especially if you're only in the main areas like in Warsaw, right? As soon as you go a little bit outside of the city, it's a bit cheaper, but it requires a working level of Polish, and a lot of foreigners don't get to that level, so they don't really get to experience that. I think the war was the thing that really changed everything. You have 2 million Ukrainian refugees coming into the country, but not enough housing. Housing has increased a lot. Food and everything in general has also increased quite a bit. Groceries, in my opinion, are still relatively quite affordable. And if you want to go out for a date and stuff, it's still not as much as what you would be spending in the US, but it's not dirt cheap like Southeast Asia or Latin America. I know a lot of people came to Poland looking for a cheap way of life in Europe, but if you can't keep up or you don't make enough, that causes a lot of people to leave. Another culture shock to people is just the drinking and smoking culture here. This was one of the biggest shocks to me. I've never seen so many women smoke in any country that I've ever been to, ever. And I'm going to be honest, I think it's extremely disgusting. I think cigarettes are gross. Maybe people like who are millennials around my age, they don't smoke as much. Everybody in university right now, all of the women smoke. It's crazy. And it's not just cigarettes. A lot of them also smoke the IQOS, but a lot of them also smoke the vapes. I think the vapes are the most dangerous ones. Like, you can buy it super easily at Żabkas or stores around the metro station. People sell the vapes, and so many kids are smoking it, and they're smoking it indoors, and they start from such a young age. So that's why a lot of these younger generations, like especially the girls, they look so old. They're like 18 or 19, but they look like they're 24 or 25. So that was the most shocking thing to me. It's such a big part of the social culture here, especially during the winter. So since Polish culture in general is quite closed, one of the ways that people meet people is through smoking. And I asked a lot of these younger people, like, why do you guys smoke? You know, it's super bad for you. But they say that all their friends did it, and it's very hard to fight against the peer pressure. And the drinking can get a little extreme as well. Like, if you go to a party, they're just all doing vodka shots. And I don't really like to drink either. And if you don't smoke or drink, then I can see how that limits your social life a lot. So with all of these problems, why did I personally stay? I personally really love this country because I think just who I am as a person fits very well into Polish culture. I don't feel like I have to hide myself. My sense of humor, the way that I talk, how direct and blunt I am, how honest I am with the good and the bad, how willing I am to assimilate and adapt to Polish culture. I think all of these things are things that I do naturally, but Polish people seem to really appreciate that. So that's why it's been a really good fit for me. I'm not here trying to change the Polish people's way of life. I have my observations, look to ways that I think the country can improve, but I fully understand that I am a guest in this country. If you really make the effort, you'll find that Poland is a very rewarding place, and I cannot recommend it enough for living. It's also a really good place to raise a family, so a lot of really good things about this country. I highly recommend that you guys watch this video next. I'll see you on the next one.
This, I think, was very interesting. I love his perspective because it's not about changing anything. And obviously, he was very, there's bad things or there's good things. I think any country, every country is going to be like that. But it's all the matter of perspective, because ultimately, I think at the end of the day, everything's subjective. So even though, those are his opinions and, from someone obviously who has lived there, but I think maybe if you ask someone else, a foreigner that lives in Poland, maybe they're going to have a different perspective. Maybe it's going to be the same. That whatever, the outcome, I think, is just going to depend ultimately, obviously, because again, everything has to do with your opinion, your lifestyle, your personality. It just depends on a lot of factors. But ultimately, and why you stay, because again, everything is going to be negative, it's going to be positive, it's going to be everything. You need to have a balance, but again, nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. Things are not black and white. But, oh, everyone's gonna leave, the title of the video, almost every foreigner is gonna leave. But yeah, maybe always that his perspective, but he stayed and he was very clear in it works for me. And I think that's the key thing about all of this. And I think that maybe that's why obviously it's not every single foreign person that moves to Poland is gonna wanna leave eventually. No, it just has to work for you and for your specific goals, your specific lifestyle, your specific, goals towards your future, how you think, where do you see yourself living? Do you see yourself living in here and being happy here? And I think, again, because happiness and the contentment and satisfaction, they just look very different depending on the person. So I think it's all about evaluating what really works for you. And obviously if it doesn't work for you because, the values of this country, I didn't really got to adapt, then yeah, sure, leave. But not necessarily because someone left means that, oh, everyone's going to leave because no one's going to be able to adapt. No, of course not. And the other way, it goes the other way around. Just because he had a really great time here and he was, no, I can see myself living here. I think I found my place. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to be able to find their place. I think it's a matter of finding what really works for you, and that goes for Poland or whatever country in the world. That's the good news. You have a lot of countries to choose from in the world in which you can making you feel. I think if you don't feel like you belong to one place in particular, or maybe you want to go and explore what's outside, well, that's the good news. You have so many countries to choose from. Then you can just see this. I think this society really does. I feel at home, whether or not it's really, you're originally from there. That's unconsequential. It's about feeling as if you belong there, and that's really the most important part. But I think there were some surprising things to me. The drinking and smoking, though, I think it's really funny because in Europe, I think everyone smokes. I think it can be quite shocking, I think, because again, I don't know why it's it's a cultural thing, but I don't know if they never got the whole, smoking is gonna kill you. I don't think they got the memo. I think it was maybe, I know it was an American thing. I have no idea, but you've been drilled, as a child and forever, but smoking is bad. I think that's why a lot of people, just few people, well, not few people, but I think just in comparison with Europe, I think it's just fewer people smoke in general. So it can be quite shocking just to see them, when you go to Europe, everyone's smoking, and I think it can be a little bit of a culture shock. But it's funny that he mentioned the babes, and I thought, because obviously he's speaking specifically about Poland, he spoke about girls specifically, which I'm a little unclear. But it's only girls? Is it boys? I mean, he obviously was going on about, just teens in general. They just go and you do see a lot of young people smoking. And not even just young people, teenagers, which I think you would find isn't that illegal. But no, because vaping, it's not illegal. But it's funny that he mentioned as this being a whole thing in Poland, because I would have thought, well, I don't know, because I know vapes, I think, specifically vapes, I'm not talking about cigarettes, I'm talking about vapes in general. I think those are extremely popular in the US, and I thought it was probably an American thing. I thought maybe in Europe they were a little bit less popular, or maybe cigarettes still come out on top because people just prefer them, and even teens and stuff. But I don't know, maybe that's the thing, because maybe cigarettes are for, 18 and over, and vapes are, 18 and younger. So maybe that's why that's why you see a lot of teens using them. And that's the thing, a lot of parents they care about this because they see it as a safer alternative, which I think you're still out. I think it's not a safer alternative at all. I think it's still quite bad. But ultimately, again, is their choice. But yeah, I was surprised about the whole thing about Poland being big on vapes, because I think in the US it's exactly the same. And I always see people, sort of maybe not complaining, but just talking about this in general. People, I think, it's a concern of, yeah, we sort of they have a bunch of years in which society sort of was trying to eradicate people, or at least lower sort of the smoking rates. And then you have people vaping all over, and they're vaping as young as, 13 or 14. So it's sort of, no, we took a step backwards. So that's really interesting. The cost of living, I thought I always heard that Poland was a little bit cheaper when it comes to countries, European countries in general. I always thought that, oh yeah, Poland, I think, is one of the cheaper ones. But apparently not anymore. But one of the things that also struck me as interesting was that he was talking about the cost of living, as especially, I think, housing in general. And the cost, I mean, I think housing in particular, maybe, I don't know if it was because of, oh, now it's really expensive, or maybe it's because, again, what he mentioned, they just got a lot of refugees, a lot of people came into the country, so they just simply do not have the space. I would imagine that's a thing as well in bigger cities, because everyone wants to live in the city. Obviously, I think, well, not everyone, but let's assume around, I don't know, 80% of people, you always want to go to the city. Few people want to live in sort of in the countryside, or just in the suburbs, or just a little bit further away. And I think that's obviously the problem. But I think, again, that's a problem in Poland. It's a problem, I think, in the UK, in Spain, in the US, in everywhere. It's just a thing that's a worldwide problem. I think Poland, it's not the exception, which I think, wow, that sucks, because I was hoping at least one place in the world didn't have this problem. But no, it's a worldwide thing. And also, it's funny that he mentioned, of course, in the city, things are a little bit more expensive, and specifically, I think he mentioned Warsaw, which I think it's part of the curse. I think every country, doesn't matter where, if you want to go to the city, be prepared to spend a little bit more. Obviously, as farther away you go in sort of more rural areas, it's gonna be cheaper, and that's at least that's a good thing, I guess. Is well, the good news is, if you don't want to spend a lot, you just have to go to the more rural areas. Only that, well, people are going to tell you, well, but there's nothing left for me. I don't have anything. I don't want to do. Nothing happens there, so that's why people don't want to move there. But well, at least it's a refuge. It's at least of comfort. And obviously, I think the most sort of striking thing about this thing were two things. The racism, I think it's wild. And I mean, he obviously, it's not that he's accusing racism, but he makes a really good point about the whole Polish culture. And if you look at the history, I think you maybe understand why they're so, cautious about foreigners and cautious about people that do not look the same as them. And I mean, that can be an explanation. Obviously, I get that they have a lot of trauma, and that's why they are sort of a little bit more reserved. It's not as if they're going to, or I understood it correctly, it's not as if it's going to be unsafe or you're going to be yelled at slurs on the street, but maybe it's about, the sort of the microaggressions and people making jokes about, some, jokes. I don't know, because he said, oh, well, I'm not offended. I think it was a little bit offensive. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you have to ask a person. I don't know, maybe it's wrong of us, but I don't know, for me and him to say. And if you're not the targeted group, maybe you shouldn't feel offended on their behalf. Maybe just ask them if they're feeling offended, and maybe that's sort of, well, that's the thing. And maybe I shouldn't speak like this if someone, the person that should be offended says, what, this is not cool. It's, oh, well, okay, yeah, maybe that's a step towards learning. But I don't know, I found a little bit, oh my God, I think that's a little bit offensive, but I don't know, maybe as the targeted group. But maybe, again, it's not about people yelling slurs on the street, or maybe just being violent towards a group of people. It's more about the whole, the little comments here and there. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't know how out of control this is. Hopefully it's like that. Well, not hopefully, but I think between the two things, I think, well, it's better if it's just comments and not, an actual attack on someone, which I think that's really, really bad. But the other, it's the language thing, and obviously I think it goes both ways. The sort of people not integrating properly, I think, into a society. I think that goes hand in hand with the language sort of barrier, because if you have a language barrier, you don't speak that language, I honestly believe it's impossible for you to actually integrate into said society, just because how people speak and how people communicate. That's just, I don't know. It's crazy to think of this as, oh, it's gonna rewire your brain. But in a way, kind of is. I think when you're communicating, and when you speak a language and you have to communicate with people in that society, within that same sort of, with that shared language, your brain, you just start thinking differently, because obviously you're going to start thinking in that language, and your brain is going to make the switch. And I can't explain it, but I think it's just a thing of, well, yeah, how are you going to be totally integrated into this society if you don't have sort of the basic tenet of this, which is we can't communicate properly. So how are you supposed to integrate into this society if we don't have the same sort of shared language? I think that's a huge step towards understanding a culture, just because, again, the language is, it's communication. So it's wild to me. It just, as he mentioned, there's people that have been living here for years, 7 years, 10 years, and I'm not talking about people that just, I'm going for the summer, or I'm going as a tourist, I'm only staying for a couple of months. No, of course I don't mean that. I mean someone that's really actively, I want to move there. I have to sort out my paperwork. I'm gonna actually move there. You're gonna have to learn this at some point, and it's not about English. Just I can get by with English because everyone speaks English. Yeah, but it's not about that. Of course, obviously the people, they're Polish people, are probably always going to feel this barrier between you and them, and it doesn't matter if you've been living there for 20 years. I don't think if you speak, and of course you're going to make mistakes. Maybe there are some words that you're not going to understand, or you're going to know, but I think it's about the effort and sort of trying to and keeping conversations, I think, with people for the most part, as if they can understand you and you can understand them. Of course, and then these are obviously appreciated as well. They feel the effort, and you have, again, what I mean of maybe you don't speak it at 100%, or maybe your accent is not, they can feel, and they can obviously listen. Oh, you're not from here, but they don't really care. Probably it's more about, but you made the effort to actually understand us, and that really it's a step towards understanding the culture, and it's a step towards you integrating into our society, so we can see you as one of us. So of course I think it's just crazy, it's wild. I think, and that again, if you're moving to a country, you're gonna have to learn the language eventually. That's why you should move. If you have long-term plans, you have to make the point, well, yeah, I'm gonna have to learn this at some point. So maybe take a look. If this is really hard for me, maybe this is not the place for me. Maybe I should move somewhere else. If you feel like it's gonna be really, really hard for you to learn, which apparently Polish, I mean, but this, he said, oh, well, it's hard, but maybe it's not that hard. But I don't believe him, because he speaks Mandarin, which I think is a really, really hard language. So of course Polish is not that hard for you. You speak Mandarin. But I think for the rest of the world, like he mentioned, I think for instance, English speakers, it's a really tough thing. It's a really hard thing. It's not impossible, but again, it's gonna be a little bit harder. And yes, some people have a harder time with languages. Some people just have an easier time learning something. But, again, the effort is appreciated, and I think Polish people can definitely see that. And if you want to be fully integrated, you're going to have to learn it at some point. Maybe, it's going to take me a long time to learn it. Yes, but, you have to start now, because time's going to pass either way. So better start now. So that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.